Okay. I hear an echo. Echo scares me. Well, I am glad to be here today, and I'm really glad to be with all of you today. My family, I don't know where they went. I have a wife. There's my in-laws. Most of you may not know that Larry Allen produced such a beautiful offspring that I had to marry her. So Larry Allen is actually my father-in-law. My wife is up there with my little girl now, the little boy. Got a brand new boy, just turned 9 months old yesterday. And so I am excited. I love life. I love it with everything inside of me. And I got involved in doing what I'm doing now because of a wonderful liberal Democratic senator who convinced me that I needed to be involved. I'll never forget, back in 2008, I'm sitting on the couch watching television, and Senator Durbin and all the Democratic senators decided that they needed to call the executives of the oil companies or the oil companies to come and grill them while the gas prices are so high. How many of you remember that? And I'm watching Senator Durbin. I'm like everybody else. I'm raising a family. I have a small business. I don't want to be involved in politics. It's boring. It's too much work. People lie all the time. Why would you want to be involved? I want to watch college football. I want to go snow skiing in the wintertime. But when he started to speak, there's something inside of me that couldn't take it any longer. I think we're going to have to come down on the volume just a tad bit more of my guys up there. If not, I'm going to have to switch mics, I think. What he started to do was such a level of hypocrisy that it just burned on the inside of me. When he began to say to the oil exec company that day, "Have you no shame what you're doing to the American people? To the truck drivers, to the farmers, to the single home mom parent houses. Have you no shame?" And I'm sitting there looking at him like, I can't believe the level of hypocrisy. And I was further mad at the oil execs who didn't have enough backbone in them to stand up to it. Because number one, the oil companies are one of the few businesses in the world where the very product they dig up out of the ground, that they don't set the price of. It's traded on the commodity market. Second of all, if you don't know this may shock some of you, the federal government makes more in tax revenue in the production and selling of gasoline than the oil companies make in profit. So that day, my heart was just fluttering. I realized that I was being pushed to a change in my life, and I wasn't sure what that was going to be, but I called up my father-in-law and said, "Would you like to go to the mountains and let's do some research? We love going to the mountains." And I said, "Let's just go up there for 4 or 5 days by ourselves and let's get on the internet, and I'm just going to start studying. I want to know for myself." And so I started studying, and I just started all kinds of taxes. I studied the tax issue, how much we pay in taxes, how many different kind of taxes we pay. In fact, I was blown away that there are cities in Colorado and in Philadelphia, or Pennsylvania, that have a thing called the occupational privilege tax. Now, don't confuse this with the income tax that you'll have to pay from your paycheck. Don't confuse it with the sales tax that you pay when you buy something. Don't confuse it with the property tax that you pay on the house that you just purchased. What this is that the king of that county and that city have said, if you want to work in our location, you must pay an extra tax. It's a privilege to work here. In fact, when the Atlanta Braves go and play the Phillies, they have to pay a tax because they earn income that day. And so a lot of baseball companies just said, "Hey, we're not going to go play in your town anymore." Every single time there's an economic need, what does the first response by those in government do? Raise the tax. They are just so dumb. I hope before we finish today that I explain to you in a very logical way why Ronald Reagan had it right. And I tell you the truth, in all of the things that I imagined in my life, I never once imagined that I would share the stage with Ronald Reagan. Not one time. But I am glad. When I was young, I used to watch him as 8 and 9 years old, and I grew up in a very bad environment. My dad, my original dad, came back from Vietnam. He became really famous. I was told he became on the FBI's most wanted list. My mother was mentally insane. I was in foster homes, reform centers, later jail. But at the age of 16, I met a man who changed my life forever, and that man's name is Jesus Christ. And And so that is the passion that drives me in everything I do. And so some of you may not have a religious following here, and that's okay, because we're here for one purpose, and that's the purpose of patriotism, bringing back the foundational fabric of our Constitution, and that's what I fight for. Out of all of that research, not knowing what I would do, hey Eric, could you bring me a book? I had a book with me forever, and it didn't follow me up here for some reason. But I wrote a book called No More Secrets. How many of you ever have seen the movie Sneakers? 1 and 2? Go rent the movie, go buy it. It's a wonderful movie. And that's where the concept of the name came from, No More Secrets. Basically, what I realized in talking with friends and family members, thank you, this is my brother, was that so much of what comes out of Washington, D.C., particularly the lies, the one-liners, the statements made by the Democrats and the liberals, to try to convince you that you need to allow them to do what they want to do, is because we don't understand some basic fundamental concepts of economics in our country. And so my goal was, how do I reach in mass the American people? Because they're not going to read a 300-page book by Thomas Sowell. Some of you here probably wouldn't read a 300-page book by Thomas Sowell. Mark Levin, who wrote a wonderful book, only sold, I think, like 2 million copies or something, out of a nation of 300 million. They're just not going to read it. So I wanted to create something that would take 30 minutes, that would so impart a philosophical concept in your mind that every time you heard of a bill or you heard of a politician promise you the moon, you would filter through this. And it's full color, 64 pages front to back, with lots of pictures. Lots of pictures to interest people who don't want to read all 64 pages. And so today at midnight, I said, man, I want to change my mind on what I want to talk about today. And I hate doing that because I like to churn things over, so I'm going to split up my speech in 2 different concepts. Number 1 is about liberty, number 2 is about principles of this book, primarily because of what's happening in Washington, D.C. this week with the budget battle. I am a heavy drinker, so I'm going to drink some water from time to time. You know, today, sitting over here, and I went with my father-in-law, we went to Arizona a couple of weeks ago to the Tea Party Summit meeting in Arizona. There's just something that just stirs on the inside of you when you are with like-minded people. There's something that feels good here today about being with people who understand where we are in our current crisis. And I say a crisis because there's a crisis economically, there's a crisis with losing our liberty, there's a crisis with the very foundation that most of you here, if you're 50 or 60 years old, you enjoyed rather well over your lifetime. But the new generation, the one that's rising up today, the one that's coming out of high school and college, they're coming into a crisis that they don't even recognize or see, because quite frankly a lot of them are really caught up in the entertainment aspects of life. But those of you who are here today, you're here for one reason, because you see it, you recognize it, you see in the distance of the horizon a battle that is starting to brew to take away our rights and our liberties. What exactly are we witnessing? Quite frankly, I believe we're witnessing the complete failure of the United States of America. We are witnessing the demise of free speech, the freedom of religion, the right to privacy, and the right to property, including one's own wealth. We have a president who will bow down before foreign leaders out of respect, he says. And I honestly can respect that. But when you go to a religious American university, and you ask them to cover up the symbols of their religious belief system, I have a problem with that. I have a problem when a president will say, I will respect the foreign leaders of the world, but not the citizens of my own country. We have a president who stood before his very first G8 summit meeting and declared to all those around the world that you and I, the citizens of the greatest country on planet Earth, are arrogant. He made this statement despite the fact that we Americans give more money voluntarily out of the goodness of our hearts than the whole of the European community to bless people in foreign countries. We have a president in the first week of his office, during the great economic collapse of 2009, issued a memorandum, his second day in office. He issued a memorandum that says your last paycheck dollars must go to provide abortions to women around the world. We have a government that has created scanners to take pictures of your naked body, that's now saying you must have this picture taken when you go to an airport. But now they're pushing it to buses, to trains, and to courthouses. And if you refuse, they're allowed to detain and or arrest you. We have a government that requires you to obtain a license if you want to carry a gun. But now they're saying, just in the last couple of weeks, that information isn't private. That they have the right to hand it over to newspapers like the New York Times that published all of the gun owners in New York. And now they're trying the same thing in Illinois. So see, the right to privacy is only a right when it suits those in power. This is because they no longer respect the Constitution of the United States of America. The President took an oath to defend the Constitution, but now he is leading elected officials down a path of abuse of power, but by not upholding the laws as required by the Constitution. We have a President that, when ordered by a federal judge to lift the ban on drilling in the Gulf Coast, completely ignored the order. Just said, I'm not going to do it. Now you and I are paying millions of dollars in tax money because a future court ruling said the President is in contempt of the court. He has hurt the economic activity of the fishermen and of the oil wells, and we have to pay millions of dollars for them. When a judge ruled that Obamacare was unconstitutional and the President's attorneys agreed in court that his order would be obeyed, they left the court and simply ignored the ruling. The President recently declared that the Defense of Marriage Act was unconstitutional in his thinking. He just says, I think the Defense of Marriage Act is unconstitutional. And therefore he ordered the Justice Department to no longer prosecute those who are found guilty on that act. We no longer have a president as an elected official who represents you and I under the watchful eye of the Constitution. What do we have? We have an American dictator. By his leading, other district attorneys around the United States of America are no longer prosecuting cases that they personally don't agree with. In San Francisco, in a festival called Leather Week, where homosexuals will have lewd acts in the public, of things that I'm not going to mention here today, but your mind can be wild and imaginative, that when they are arrested and taken before the prosecuting attorney, he just rips up the arrest warrants. Because he believes they have a right to their lewd acts in public. Rule of law is being destroyed by those in power for the sole purpose of progressing a political agenda that they know the American people, you and I, would never vote for. Without leaders obeying the rule of law, which is their legal and moral obligation, it sends a message to the whole of America that none of us have to. I ask the question, are we heading to another civil war? Not one so much of guns and blood, but of a legal civil war. We have a whole class of citizens, about 15% of them, who no longer believe that they have a right to obey the law if they disagree with it. And they are in power. They are district attorneys and mayors and city council persons. They are now being told by the President, if you don't believe in it, you don't have to prosecute it. What would have happened if our mayor just said, you know what, I don't believe it's constitutional that you should have a license to carry a gun. So I'm going to call the sheriff up and say, Sheriff, no longer prosecute anybody when you find them without a gun license. What would happen if the corporations just stand up one day and say, you know what, I believe that the amount of taxes we pay is unconstitutional, therefore we're not going to pay anymore. What would happen if governors just started taking it upon their own selves to determine what is constitutional or not? We will break down into a civil war. The very single most needed ingredient for a government to survive, whether that government be socialism, communism, republic, or democracy, it must be that the rule of law be followed. If you don't have the rule of law being followed, you no longer have a form of government, you have anarchy. Who was preaching from the pulpit a message that if you don't like it the way it is, and you can't get it passed in Congress, and you can't get it passed in a court, you can just do it the only way you want to. This is the way that every single country starts to collapse, when the rule of law is no longer being obeyed. I haven't heard anybody talk about this before, but over the last 3 days it's really come to light in a lot of the stories that I've been reading, a lot of the news articles that we've been writing. And I thought, we need to slap the hands of the president somehow or another. We didn't make him accountable for his actions. So I thought, what we need to do in the next budget, and I'm writing a letter to a bunch of congressmen going to try to get this in their thinking, is that we need to say, Congressman, you need to create a department that will specifically defend the Defense of Marriage Act within the FBI, and you're going to fund it, and that funding is going to be taken away from the White House budget. Since it is the President's own actions that is creating the need for this department to be created, then we should slap the back of his hand. We should say, you can't do that. The millions of dollars, which we don't know how much it's going to be in Louisiana because of the contempt of court, we should just take it out of the president's budget. We should say, hey, instead of having 31 SARs, you can only have 29 now. We need to fight back. And we need some backbone in Washington, D.C. representing us. Because of the actions of our president, district attorneys, and others around America, I truly believe that our personal liberty is on a path to destruction. And this is really amazing because what is one of the hot topics that we all hear about every week? Immigration. And why are we having a problem with immigration? Is it because we're like Cuba? Or North Korea? I would love for you to go home tonight, pull up on the map of the Korean Peninsula. Just Google Korean Peninsula at nighttime. And I'm going to show you capitalism of South Korea, socialism or communism in North Korea. When you look up the Korean Peninsula, you will see everything below that parallel line, whichever it is, I can't remember, is bright like a Christmas tree. And everything north of that, from North Korea, you'll see 3 dots of light bulbs on it. That's the difference. And we have some numbnuts in Congress and in the White House who believe that we should be going down the path of socialism. The immigrants that are coming to this country, they're coming at risk to life and limb. They're coming by boat, they're coming by plane, by train, or by foot. Any way they can get into our country. Why? Because they themselves have an individual desire to know that they have a right to pursue the dreams and the desires of their heart. A very desire, a very thing that we're fighting and struggling every day to keep and maintain. These citizens are not trying to sneak into Venezuela with Hugo Chavez. They're just not trying to do it. They're not in a boat for 100 miles trying to sneak into Cuba. They're not risking life and limb to leave America to go into China. They want to come here to our country. When citizens of other countries are unfortunate enough to find themselves in a war-torn area of the world, they do not shout for joy when they see the UN blue flag coming up over the horizon. They don't have a party in their house when they see the flag of France or Germany or the United Kingdom or Canada. But let me tell you something. When Old Glory comes over the horizon of their country's shores, there are shouts of joy when they see the red, white, and blue. Because they know that when the American soldiers come up, business is going to be done. They know that we hate bullies, we hate hypocrites, and we're going to stop the dictators from taking away their rights to liberty, life, and pursuit of happiness. And why is that? Because our founding fathers created a nation that created within us a lifeblood, a desire, a hunger for liberty. How many of you young men here, growing up, you were taught to take up for little girls being hurt? You were taught to take care of your mother. You were taught to take care of your sister. You were taught to take care of who was weaker. That's in our genetic code. And it's there because of our founding fathers. A study was done a few years ago where there was an old lady, and they had some actors, about 3 or 4 young men, that would always attack this lady. So they went all over the world studying different countries. And they went to the United Kingdom, and they were just beating her. I mean, just beating her. Not literally, it was playing. But they had her on the ground taking her purse away. Not a single person. In Sweden, in Germany, France, all these countries. Now they went to Italy, and Italy took up for it. They came to America, and they said, well, let's go to a city we don't think we would get much help with. They went to New York City. They grabbed that purse. In about 3 seconds, there were 4 guys in there. Same thing in San Francisco. Same thing in Houston, Texas. No matter where they went in America, as soon as they attacked this old lady, they were trying to say, wait a minute, this is a study, because they were getting the snot knocked out of it. But I want to say to you today that this enduring flag, which has become a worldwide symbol of liberty, is losing its color, its honor, its prestige. And it isn't losing it because you and I haven't worked hard enough for the production of wealth no nation has ever witnessed in the history of world governments. And it's not because of the charity of the hundreds of billions of dollars that we've given over the centuries to help other poor nations. And it isn't because the hundreds of thousands of our mothers and our fathers who gave their lives in the pursuit of protecting freedom around the world. It's losing its luster and its power and its prestige because we have a political party in power right now, all across the nation, who believe we're not worthy of our stature. That we haven't somehow sacrificed enough. We're not the ones who started World War I and World War II. We are the ones who ended it. They say that we are too wealthy. And why? I honestly don't know. I'm sure in the book of disease and mental disorders, there's a definition that you can wrap around a liberal. I haven't figured them out yet. Because the very things that they do is aimed at the heart of destruction of the very life that they enjoy. I'm going to skip a couple of pages because we're running out of time here. And I want to get to my book. I was in London just a few weeks ago. I landed at London at 7 a.m. in the morning. Never been to London before, so it was all new to me. 7 a.m. after a 9-hour flight, when you leave here at 4 in the afternoon, that really does something with your brain and your body. I mean, you were wigging out. And so I get off the plane, and we rush to our hotel after taking a couple of trains, and just not a very secure feeling, I will be honest with you, getting on that train, traveling through those neighborhoods. And we get to our hotel, and what is the thing that I'm watching on TV? Eating breakfast. The gay and lesbian community arguing that the churches of Great Britain, the United Kingdom, should be forced by the government to allow them to get married in that church. This woman actually came on and she said, us Christians who are gay, I thought, man, if that's not an oxymoron of a statement I've ever heard in my life. We have a right to get married in a church. No, you don't. You don't have a right to go into a church that believes in something that you do not. But in the United Kingdom, they're arguing that they do. 2 weeks later, when I come back, I read a story that breaks my heart. The United Kingdom High Court, which is equivalent to our Supreme Court, ruled that Christians are no longer able, legally, to adopt a child or be a foster parent. They didn't say Jews. They didn't say Muslims. They didn't say they're Christian or Buddhist. They said Christians. Why? Because they said a Christian couple will not raise their child to believe that a homosexual lifestyle is a healthy one. We are seeing a movement around the world, and I'm going to talk to you in just a minute about the European Union Bill of Rights. They don't call it the Bill of Rights, but we'll see how that because people desire to have a political influence, that they're just bypassing every bit of rule of law over there. In an effort to start down this path in our country of being able to call a disagreement with the homosexual community hate speech, the President on May the 4th, in a couple of weeks, is going to roll out new anti-bullying laws. These laws that he is bringing up under the Civil Rights Commission Act is scary. It is Orwellian as anything I've ever seen in my life before. Because what he has said and what they are releasing is this: that the schools are going to be required to monitor your children's electronic communications. Their text messages, their emails, their Facebook pages, their MySpace. But I'm not talking about when they're at school. I'm talking about when they're in your house, at home, in the evenings. The government is saying that we're going to allow students to sue schools if they believe that they haven't protected them enough from another bullier. It sounds good, doesn't it? It sounds reasonable that we want to protect children. And you know how they do. They come out there in a nice clothes and they bring these little child that's been hurt. It is poor and pathetic. But why is that a right for you to say to the school that you must create contracts with vendors that can spy on my child while they're in my household? This is a path that, when you try to do things that seem good to a liberal, ends up destroying a nation. So on May the 4th, he's going to announce this along with Michelle Obama, and it is going to open up Pandora's box, the likes we've never seen in this country. You got to love this. The homosexual movement, and if you're homosexual here, I'm not condemning you, but I just want to let you know that there is a movement in the homosexual community, the LBGT, whatever they call it, that is desiring to squelch free speech so much that they're willing to even turn over laws of liberty that have protected all of us, including them. In Sweden, a pastor gets up and he gives a declaratory statement of his theological viewpoint about homosexuality. He then goes to prison for a month in order not to speak again like that anymore. And you say, well, it can never happen here. Let's bring it closer. Let's go to Canada. A man gets up, another pastor, he gives the Catholic version of what their viewpoint on the homosexual movement is. He goes to prison, ordered to pay $5,000, and told that he can never, ever, ever say, produce, write, or anything that contradicts or would offend a homosexual. Do you know right now in the United Kingdom, you can go to prison longer for offending a homosexual? And when I say offending, I'm not talking about you touched him. I'm not talking about you threw something at him. I'm talking about just words. You can go to prison longer for offending a homosexual in the United Kingdom than you can for raping a woman and molesting a child. In their Bill of Rights, they have a thing called the freedom of expression. So to encourage freedom of expression, they have a law that they just rolled out this past year called third-party harassment laws. And what is this? If you're in an office place and you tell a joke to your buddy, and it may be a little off color, it may be a little bad taste, but someone over here hears it and they're offended, they have a right to sue you now. If you're on the phone with your wife and you're just telling her how much you love her, and you don't even know someone's listening to you, and they overhear you, they have a right to sue you now if what you say offends them. In Germany, they have the thing called the offense police. That if I offend you, you can call 911 or the equivalent thereof. Judge and jury shows up on a motorcycle and you say, he offended me. He has a right to write a ticket up to $50,000. Judge and jury on the spot. When a homeschooling couple in Germany sued for the right to homeschool their child, the Supreme Court of Germany, despite being a member of the EU where they outlaw this, the High Court said, and I'm almost paraphrasing it as precisely as I can, only the state has the right to teach and train your child up in what they should believe. Therefore, they must go to our state-approved schools. This was the same exact sentiment a couple of weeks ago in the United Kingdom High Court when they ruled that Christians couldn't adopt children. Gays and lesbians of America call it hate speech because we believe it's an immoral lifestyle. They call it hate speech. United Kingdom calls it hate speech. Every European Union calls it hate speech. Canada calls it hate speech. Even now in South America, certain countries are calling it hate speech. Do you know what our Creator calls it? Freedom of religion and freedom of speech. This is why when the president who reads from a teleprompter, even when he goes to a third grade school, he reads from a teleprompter. On a baseball field, he reads from a teleprompter. 3 or 4 times now, when reciting the Declaration of Independence, he leaves out the part from our Creator, that we are endowed with certain unalienable rights by our Creator. Now, why is he doing it? It has to be on purpose. He's reading from a teleprompter. It isn't like he just forgot the phrase that moment. Why is he doing this? Because if you want to take away my right to free speech, you have to go through the Creator, and I guarantee you He's not going to give you that right to take it away. But if over a period of time we can convince the American people that our rights don't come from a Creator because we are monkey-bound people that came from monkeys that headed back that way, then our rights have to come from somewhere, and they must come from man. And if they come from man, they can be taken away by man. So I want to go through real quickly to show you the difference of what the liberals believe in compared to what we believe in. I have in my hand the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union. This isn't their constitution. This isn't their governing document of how to run their government. This is just a document that explains what your rights are. Our whole Constitution, including the Bill of Rights when it was written, 6 pages long. How many pages is this? 52. I would like to read just a few things from it. The very first part of the Bill of Rights. Human dignity is inviolable. It must be respected and protected. Number 2, Article 2. Everyone has a right to life. First of all, that's a lie. No one in the European community has the right to life. Not one of them have the right to life. They only came to being because their parents believed they had the right to life. But if the parents wanted to go and commit abortion, they could end them. No one shall be condemned to the death penalty or executed. So that means I could go and kill everybody I want, take away your liberty and your right to life, and I could never be punished by my right to life being taken away from me. And you have to feed me 3 meals a day and keep me comfortable till I die. Right to the integrity of the person. I mean, there's some weird stuff in here. Everyone has a right to respect for his or her physical and mental well-being. That's just weird. I don't care how you look at it. But here's where I want to start making a point about the way we view rights by our Creator and the way the European Union views rights. And this is what the liberals are picking up on. The free and informed consent of the person concerned according to the procedures laid down by the law. They're talking about if you're in a hospital, they can't do a procedure without your consent. But listen to the last part of it. According to the procedures laid down by law. A right, like Mr. Allen said earlier, isn't a right if it can be taken away. So what they're saying is we're going to give you the right to a consent, but only what our laws may happen to be from year to year. Everyone has a right to liberty and security of person. Article 8. We have a right to privacy. We have a right to privacy. No one in the United Kingdom or the European Union has a right to privacy. You know what they have a right to? Protection of their personal data. You understand the difference there? The government has a right to anything about you, but you have a right that the government must try to protect it as best as possible. Such data must be processed fairly for specific purposes and on the basis of the consent of the person concerned or some other legitimate basis laid down by law. See, every right they give you, it can be circumvented by the law. Everyone has the right to the protection of personal data. I read that earlier. Article 9, this is just weird. You have a right to get married. Whatever. But only in accordance with the laws. Article 10, freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. I'm just going to read one aspect of it here. The right to conscientious objection is recognized in accordance with the national laws governing the exercise of this right. Again, it isn't a right. Everyone has a right to freedom of expression. We just already explained how you don't have the right to freedom of expression. You don't have the right to freedom of religion, even though they say you do in here. Article 13, you have to love this one. I mean, a liberal wrote this one up. The arts and scientific research shall be free from constraint. Why in the world would you make that a right? Shouldn't that be the right of freedom of expression? There are about 57 articles in here, and each article represents a right. Almost, I would say about 3/4 of them all end at the end where it states according to national laws. Article 24, though, and this is what is trying to impact us here in America. We're trying to pass an amendment on this. The rights of a child. Let me tell you, my child has very few rights. My child has a right to obey me. My child has the right to go to bed at 8 o'clock at night. My child has a right to eat her broccoli. My child does not have a right to be disrespectful or to rebel against authority. My child does not have the right to believe in a religious expression she deems right. She can have that right when she's 20, but now she's going to believe in Jesus. That's her right. In the European Union, they're saying, in all actions relating to children, whether taken by public authorities or private institutions, the child's best interest must be a primary consideration. The UN right now has a child... Oh, my mind just went blank. A child amendment signed by every country in the world except 2, and that is the United States of America and Somalia. Now, why Somalia? I have no clue. But they are banging down the doors to make us sign that treaty. And when we sign that treaty, you will no longer have the right to raise your child that you best think. It's going to be right here. The United Nations said the exact same thing, that rights of children can supersede the rights of the parents to raise them. Article 28, they have the right to collective bargaining in action. Family and professional life. Oh, here's my favorite. This is my all-time favorite. Article 41. You, sir, and ma'am, have the right to good administration from the government. Do you love that? Now, only in a socialist country do they recognize that the government administration is so bad that they must make that a right. And I want to finish up the scope of guaranteed rights. Article 52. Are you ready for this? We have a Bill of Rights given to us by a creator. No political party, man, or group has the right or the legal authority to take it away from us. If they do, it will have to come by a gun, right? Amen? Article 52. Scope of guaranteed rights. Any limitation, the second word there, they're already limiting your rights. On the exercise of the rights and freedoms recognized by this charter must be provided for by law. So every single right that you just said you had a right of, they have a right to change by law. So is it really a right? Why? Their rights come by man, our rights come from our Creator. In Dearborn, Michigan, which has the highest population of Muslims in the United States of America, 2 years ago, a group called Act 17 Apologetics, I can't even say the word today, were passing out the Gospel of John in Arabic. They were arrested promptly prosecuted promptly, put in jail promptly. 2 days later, the state Supreme Court promptly released him and saying they have a right to do what they want to do. In 2010, at the exact same festival, which is the largest festival for Arabs in the United States of America, they have video. They got smarter. And so they had people 500 feet away videotaping them. And I am telling you, there was 3 of them, 4 or 5 Arabs coming around, and they were just like, they weren't even saying anything. Just motion.